I made law applications for 4 years before I secured my first vacation scheme. And when I got rejected at application stage, which happened a lot across those 4 years, I didn't always know where I'd gone wrong. Yes, if you have a mentor or someone who's willing to help you, you can get them to read your applications after you've been rejected and they can give you pointers on things you can improve. But I didn't have any of that, and also I was sending out loads of applications like you might be. And I didn't really feel comfortable dropping 10, 12 rejected applications on someone and having them read through them and tell me what I could have done better. It just didn't seem very realistic. But if you know what you're looking for, I think you yourself can review your application and find out where you could do better. So in this video, I'm going to go over the 6 most common reasons why people get rejected in the application stage for vacation scheme or training contract applications. That way you can compare your rejected application against this list and hopefully find out where you can improve. If you're new here, my name's Idin. I'm a corporate lawyer in London and a New York qualified attorney. I make videos about the law application process, my experiences as a lawyer, and that sort of stuff. So if you're interested in that, please consider subscribing to my channel. I also run an email newsletter called LITTLELAW, which covers commercial awareness for aspiring lawyers. It's completely free. If you want to check it out, the link will be in the description. The first reason your application could have been rejected is because it lacked depth of content. This is when in your application, when you're asked about yourself, you're writing about the same things over and over. Let's say one question asks you why you want to become a lawyer, and you talk about your paralegal job and how that got you interested in the field of law, and that's great. But imagine the next question asked about a challenge you faced and how you overcame it, or something like that. And you talk about your paralegal job and a challenge you faced in that role. Here, if you talk about the paralegal role again, you're missing an opportunity to talk about other things you might have done. And talking about other things that you might have done will make your application more interesting and show your different strengths in different areas. If your application looks like this, then I think one of 2 things is happening. Either you've done a bunch of exciting things like part-time jobs, hobbies, side projects, whatever, and you don't want to talk about them in your application because you don't think they're professional enough or impressive enough. If that's the case, then you need to lower the barriers to what you're including in your application. You should write about your pottery hobby or whatever it might be if it's in the right context to answer the right question in the application. Honestly, I think stuff like that in an application makes you stand out and makes you seem much more interesting as a candidate anyway. The second reason you might lack depth of content is because you don't feel that you've done enough that you can write about. If that's the case, you'll need to build more relevant experiences. You can do this by joining uni societies, taking on part-time gigs, finding short-term paralegal jobs, stuff like that. So once you do that, in future applications, you have more things that you can talk about, more experiences, and that will give you an opportunity to show off all these great sides of yourself. Another reason your law firm application could have been rejected is because it lacked depth of research. You've heard this one before, I'm sure, but if your application looks kind of copy-pasted and it looks like you've taken it from somewhere else, you're not going to get through the application stage. I've got an entire video on this topic of how you can tailor your application for a specific firm, and I'll link it in the description so you can check it out. But basically, the more in-depth research you do, the easier it will be to tailor your application specifically to that firm. I'm not going to go through the full thing because you can just check the video I just mentioned, but a quick summary: you want to research where other people are looking. A good place to look is in a law firm's annual report. You get loads of good information there that's specifically about that firm, and candidates don't always look at this. And you also want to meet and speak to people at that firm. These insights will, by definition, be tailored to that firm. They can't have been copy-pasted from somewhere else because it's someone at that firm speaking about their experience at that firm. Mention these conversations in your application, talk about the people you spoke to, mention their names, that's all completely fine. As I said, I've done a full video on this, which is going to be linked in the description, so if you think this is your problem, check out that video. A third reason your application could have been rejected is because your answers weren't answering specifically the question that was asked clearly. If you get rejected, go through your application and really ask yourself if your answer is answering the question that was asked specifically. So if you're asked about what made you interested in a career in commercial law, did you answer what made you interested in a career in commercial law, or did you talk about the reasons that you were interested in law at uni? This is something that sounds a bit subtle, but it happens a lot, and a lot of the applications I see make this sort of mistake. Also, different application forms from different firms will have really similar sounding questions, but they won't be exactly the same. So if you've used an answer from an old application as a base for your new application, because the questions are quite similar, this is where you have a massive risk of falling into this trap. I've got an entire video on what a clearly written application looks like, and I'll link that in the description. In that, I go over how you can write really clearly to make sure your application is readable, and also how to make sure you're always answering the question asked. But if you want to do a quick test to see if your application writing is clear, just copy paste your application answer into the website Hemingway and see what readability score it gives you and what issues it spots spots in your writing. If your readability grade is like grade 9, 10 or higher, and your writing's covered in all the colorful highlights, then your writing isn't clear enough. A fourth reason your application might have been rejected is because you didn't demonstrate a long-term commitment to a career in law. Law firms are looking to invest in future talent, and they want to make sure that the people applying to them have an understanding of what a career in law is and are really committed to it. So how you can show this in your application is by mentioning the law career events you've gone to while you're at university. Or maybe you've gone to one of that particular firm's webinars or open days, or met them when they came to your uni. If you show that you've had a few different interactions, ideally over a long period of time, with the career of commercial law or that specific law firm, then that will give grad recruitment a really good impression. It will make them think you're a safe bet because you really understand the career you're getting yourself into. If you're missing this sort of thing in your application, they might have some doubts about you long term, and that might be why you get rejected. Another and the most common reason that applicants get rejected in the application process is simply because there are mistakes in their written application. This is a boring one, but it's a really important one. And if recruiters spot a mistake in your written application, you'll probably end up on the rejected pile. And believe me, over half the applications going to law firms contain some sort of mistake, which I think you can take as a positive, because if you just make sure your application has no mistakes in it, you're already in the top half of applicants. How you solve this is pretty easy. First, make sure you proofread your work twice, then use a computerized spell checker like Grammarly and just copy paste your application into it. And even after that, it might be worth copy pasting your application into ChatGPT and asking it if it can spot any spelling errors in that. Go through those steps in that order and you won't have any mistakes in your written application. A couple of quick tips. First of all, if you're using a computerized spell checker or like ChatGPT to review your application, make sure you've set it to British spelling, because you don't want to start Americanizing all your text. And also another tip is to make sure you've written this law firm's name correctly. I know this sounds stupid, but firms that have the word "and" in their name can be really tricky, and it's really easy to get this wrong. Like for example, Latham & Watkins, the "and" is an ampersand, like an "and" symbol, but Slaughter & May write it actually with the word "and", so it's really easy to mix this sort of stuff up. Another reason you might have got rejected is honestly just because you got unlucky. When you're applying to a law firm, you're thinking, if my application is good enough, I'll get through to the next round. But it doesn't always work like that. You have to also consider the law firm's perspective. Each law firm is different, and the decisions are made by human people. So that means the firms all don't behave the same, and their hiring systems aren't perfect. Sometimes your application might be good enough for one firm, but not good enough for another. Maybe your application was good enough, but that firm just had a huge amount of applications this year because they did more uni events, or something they put on social media went super viral. Maybe the firm is recruiting fewer trainees because they just have less work, so they're trying to reduce headcount. Or maybe it's as simple as they were hiring on a rolling basis, and by the time you gave your application in, there was only 1 or 2 spots left. My point is that it's possible your application was good enough and you just still didn't get through, and it's completely out of your hands. That's not your fault, that's not the firm's fault, it's no one's fault, it's just these things aren't always perfect. That doesn't mean you should stop working on your applications, because all your applications, even the ones that you had that were successful, are still able to be improved in some way. But I wanted to mention this because if you've gone through your application and you think it's good, and you've checked it against all these points I've mentioned and it's not had any of those issues, then it might just be that the application was good enough and you shouldn't be too hard on yourself, and you might have just been unlucky this time. Luckily, if that's the case, all you have to do is persevere with applications and eventually you will break into a career in law for sure. I know how long researching and writing a law application can take, and it's super frustrating where at the end of all of that, you get rejected and you don't even know why. So that's why I made this video. I wanted to give you some ideas of things that you can look for when you're reviewing your application and figure out where you could do it better. I really hope that you don't feel your unsuccessful applications are a waste of time, and I hopefully from this video or from speaking to other people or whatever, you can gain something from each rejection that can help you improve in your next one. As always, let me know what you thought about this video by leaving a thumbs up or a thumbs down or a comment down below. I'm going to be making more application related videos too, so if you are interested in that, consider subscribing. For all you aspiring lawyers, I run a free commercial awareness newsletter called Little Law, and you can find the sign up link in the description. Anyway, I hope this video helped you, and I'll catch you next time.